Hey, what's going on, guys? Welcome back to another tutorial session of Magic the Gathering Arena or Magic the Gathering. So today we are actually going to show some gameplay, explain the basics of what you're looking at in Arena and what you would come across in Magic the Gathering if you were to play it in real life or a different format. So today we're just going through the tutorial stuff. We're going to take it really slow, explain what things do, what everything is on the screen that you're looking at, show the significance of what the mechanics are, and we're just going to go from there. So with the tutorial, we're going to use a white plains deck, the same exact deck that I actually did in the previous video explaining what card types exist. We're going to use that specific deck as well. So like I said, we're going to take our time. We're going to go through each of the plays, why I'm doing certain things, and what the significance of those things are. So let's go ahead and jump right in. Like I said, we're playing tutorial, so we are playing against AI here. So some of the things you see in the AI actions, you may not see in real life against another player. Okay, so this is the first screen. This is the beginning screen. This is first turn action right here. So a couple things we need to go over here. So the first thing is the big elephant in the room, I guess. This this number 20. So the number 20 on my side and his side, basically this is them and this is us. This 20 is our life points. Basically, this is what is the condition. You need to reduce this down to 0 to win the game, or to negative whatever. 0 or under. That's how you win the game, is to reduce this by 0. There are actually 2 other win conditions you can actually do to win the game. If you have this thing called a library or your deck, if this deck is reduced down to 0, that's also a win condition. So if somehow I was able to play a bunch of cards to make my opponent get rid of his deck somehow and make it 0, that's a win condition. You will win that way as well. And then obviously there are specific cards that are really good sometimes. If you meet the conditions, you will win the game just upright with that specific card, which I don't know if we'll ever run into that in tutorials, but we might. Who knows? We'll go over that stuff too. So the next thing we are going to look at, so here is my library, and I have 53 cards in it currently, and I have 7 cards in my hand. Whenever you start a game of Magic, you start off with 7 cards in your hand. Now, since we're going against the tutorial or the AI, we have to keep our hand. But when you're playing against other players, not AI, you have the option to, if you don't like your hand, you can reshuffle it into the deck and draw another 7 cards. But if you keep that, and that's called a mulligan, if you keep that hand, you then have to choose 1 card from those 7 cards that you redrew about back into the deck. Actually, it actually goes on the bottom of the deck. So that's called a mulligan. So that's basically it for that. So explained what your deck is. The area next to the deck is called the graveyard, or the discard pile. So here is my opponent's deck, and then this is where his graveyard would be, his discard pile. And here's my deck over here, and then my discard pile will be on the other side of it right there. So we have our library, we have our hand, and we have our discard pile. There's another area right over here. I don't know if we'll come across it in the tutorial, but if we ever do, I'll definitely explain it, what it is. It's called the exile. Basically, it's a different area that's outside of the game. Not outside of the game, it's still in the game, but like, it's a different area. It's exiled from the game. And that's right next to the deck on this side. So if you ever run into it, we'll definitely show it off. So the next thing I want to explain is our turn. So we are going first. So whenever you go first in the game of Magic the Gathering, you do not draw a card on your first turn if you're going first in the entire game. Now, when my turn is done, my opponent goes second, and then they can now draw a card. And then when it comes back to my turn again, I will draw a card, and you draw a card for your turn every time for the rest of the game. But at the very beginning of the game, if you're going first, you do not draw a card. So that explains the drawing mechanic for the beginning of your turn. So here are a couple symbols next to your emblem or your character And then there's a couple symbols over here. And you're probably wondering, what the hell is that stuff? Well, I'm going to explain. So, your turn is broken up into different sections of your turn. They're like, there's different parts of your turn where certain things can happen and not happen. So, we're going to explain, the breakdown of the turns and things like that. So, I'm just going to give a brief overview and then I'm just going to play a card finally. So, the first thing is stop on my upkeep and draw step. So basically your upkeep is basically the transition of the end of your opponent's turn and the beginning of your turn. There's like that little space there. That's called your upkeep. And then your draw step is right after the upkeep, right? The transition. That transition is called the upkeep. And then there's a draw step, which basically means at the beginning of your turn, after the upkeep, you get to draw a card, your draw step. Which at the beginning of your turn, you always draw a card from your deck. That's your draw step. The next phase here is called stop on my main phase. So in the Magic the Gathering, there are two main phases in the game. There's a first main phase that is prior to your attack phase or your combat phase. And then there's another main phase after the attacking phase. Don't worry, it sounds confusing, but we're going to explain it and we're going to see it and show it to you. So don't worry about it. But your first main phase occurs before the combat phase or the attack phase. The next one here is my second main phase. So basically that's after the attacking combat phase. That's when your other main phase, your second main phase occurs. Then lastly here, stop on my end step. End step is the step or the phase at the end of the main phase, but before you pass your turn. So there's a step. It's kind of weird, but it's the transition basically of your turn to your opponent's turn. That's your end step. So now that we explained that, over here on the right side, there's some other emblems. Like, okay, what's going on here? This is basically a more broken up part of these phases right here. So, and then what you can actually do is you can actually put stops here. You can actually click and make the game stop before they enter that phase. So, what we're going to do is we're just going to play a card. So the first thing we're going to play is called a land or a mana. I don't like calling it mana. I like calling it land, but there's a reason why it's called mana, and we'll go over that in a little while. So this is a plains basic land. It's a basic land plains. So like I said before, you can only, these are used to be able to play other cards like your creatures or spells. So you can only play one land per turn. Okay, so you can only play one per turn. Now there are other cards that will help you gain more land or put more land down onto the battlefield. That's not your first one, but you get one freebie one every turn. So what we're gonna do is drag it, and you can put it, click, drag up, and then let go on the battlefield, and it will put it right onto the battlefield for you. So now we have a cool looking plains land on the battle. So now the game will indicate to you what cards you're able to play with the lands available to you. So here we have two cats. We have the one plains costing 1/1 cat with lifelink, the charm stray that we talked about with lifelink, and if there's other stray cats of the same name basically on the battlefield, you get to put a +1/+1 counter. We don't have that yet. And then there's the other cat, which is a sanctuary cat, and this is the 1-drop. It costs 1 plains to play, and it's a 1 attack, 2 defense. So we get to play one of these cards. What I think we're gonna do is we're actually going to play the Charmed Stray. So basically what's gonna happen, I'm going to do it the manual way, and then I'm going to show you what the game does automatically for you. So this card costs 1 plains mana to play, which we have 1 on the battlefield. So what we can do is tap it or use that resource by clicking it, and now it is now tapped. You can no longer use it. It's being used. And then that will show a little emblem over here, 1 planes. So 1 planes is ready to be used as a resource. We can now play one of these cards. So we're going to play the Charmed Stray. Boom. Okay, so a couple things happened there. A couple things happened there, and I'm going to go over exactly what just happened. So I played this card, and when I came into the battlefield, it had like a fuzziness around the card, on top of the card. Basically, what that means is that card cannot be used as soon as it hits the battlefield, or that creature cannot attack as soon as it hits the battlefield. It's called summoning sickness. So basically, what we're doing is we're planeswalkers as the player. We are using our spells or knowledge of spells, and we are using the resources of the environment that we're in to be able to summon cards or summon creatures or summon spells. So that's what really what's happening in story fashion is we're using the resources of the environment around us, which we use the planes, to be able to summon a creature, which was this cat. Now the cat came into play and it has summoning sickness. So basically it got created and it's all disoriented and cannot attack because he's all disoriented and you can't attack until the next turn. So that's what summoning sickness is. So that's what happened. And you can see, so once I played a cat and I could not play any other cards because I used my one resource, the game automatically just ended my turn for me. You can actually put a stop so it doesn't do that. I probably should have, but I didn't because I didn't think ahead. So that ended my turn. So what we saw was our opponent drew a card because it was their first turn, and they did not go first in the entire game. They're going second turn. So they were able to draw a card. They played an island land, which is this is a different color that's in Magic the Gathering. It's blue. They're islands. And so they played 1 island resource. They tapped it to play this Fairy Miscreant. So this is a 1 island costing creature that has 1 attack and 1 defense. Now, as you can see, this creature has summoning sickness, so they could not attack with this card right away because it has the summoning sickness. It just was summoned. It doesn't know what is going on in the world right now. It just came alive. So you can't use it. Now this card has an ability called flying. So let's explain what flying does. And like I said, on the right hand of the card, it actually shows a little blurb explaining what flying means. So flying is a creature with flying can't be blocked. Okay, can't be blocked except by creatures with flying or reach. So flying is an ability basically showing the creature is flying in the air, and it can only be blocked by other creatures that are also flying in the air, or a creature that has an ability called reach, which literally means they have the reach to be able to block that creature. So that's really what that means. So the next ability or text on the card says, whenever Fairy Miscreant enters the battlefield, if you control another creature named Fairy Miscreant, draw a card. So basically on their next turn, if they play another Fairy Miscreant, since they have one existing on the battlefield, they will draw a card. Just cause. So, and then once they played this card, it ended their turn really quick as well. So, because they didn't have any other thing else to play. Because they play their land, they play their creature, they have no more resources, they pass a turn. So, at the beginning of our turn, what happened was we drew a card, which that card was a Plains land again. So now we are at the first main phase. So, what we can do is we can play a land. We can play a land every turn, only 1 land though. And once it comes into play, it's available to be used right away. That's a big thing. These are available to be used right away when you put them down. So now we're at a point where we can play some cards, or we can click next into the next phase. So what we're actually going to do is we're actually going to see if we can attack with this stray cat. Now, the one thing we want to look at is if I attack with this cat, what's going to happen? What's likely to happen? So this is a 1 power, 1 defense cat. If I attack with this cat, this fairy, if it blocks it, it has 1 attack and 1 defense. So 1 power on this cat will do 1 damage to this second number, which is the defense, and this fairy would die. Then at the same time, whenever you attack and another creature is blocked, both the attack and the defense come into play right away too. So while this cat is doing 1 damage to this fairy would also do 1 damage to my cat. And it has, because it's a power of 1 and my cat has a defense of 1. So basically what would happen is if I were to attack with this cat right off the bat as is, and they blocked it with their fairy, the fairy would die because it has 1 defense and it's taking 1 damage from my attack. Then my cat would die because it has 1 defense to its 1 attack as well. So if I were to attack right now, they're going to probably block my cat and kill it. So I don't want that to happen. So let's take a look at my hand and see what we can do to avoid that from happening. So what we can do is we can play the Sanctuary Cat. This is a 1 plains costing card and it's 1 attack and 2 defense. We can play that, but that's not really going to do much except put another creature on the field that can attack right away. So that's an option, but let's see what else we have. The next card is Knight's Pledge. This is a 1 colorless, so it could be any land or mana, and then 1 plains land. And what this does is the enchantment aura, which I explained before. You enchant the creature. Enchant creature means literally you basically attach this card to another creature. And then it says enchanted creature gets +2/+2. So what that means is the creature that I attach to this card to will then have an additional 2 attack and 2 defense automatic. And then this is for as long as this card is attached to that creature, or if the creature is dead, it will go away. So we're going to play Knight's Pledge and we're going to attach it. It actually gives you the option if you wanted to attach it to your opponent's creature, which we definitely don't want to do. We're going to attach it to our cat. So let's attach it up. So here in the game, you'll actually see the attack and defense of this card is now a 3 attack, 3 defense. So now the game recognizes you can't do anything else, and we're going to go into the combat phase. So now in the combat phase, we can declare attackers if we want to attack or not. We're going to go ahead and click on the creature and select it to be an attacker. Once it's selected to be an attacker, oh crap. Oh gosh, I need you to stop doing stuff. Okay. So, a couple things happened there, and I'm going to explain it. I attacked with this creature. They decided to not block, and they took the damage. So that's why they are currently at 17 life, is because they took 3 damage. So, they did not block. Their creatures are still alive. Now, see my card right now? It's tapped. Basically, that means it's in resting mode. Basically, I used the card to attack, the creature to attack. It attacked, it did its damage, and now it's resting. So now this card cannot be used until it untaps during the upkeep or the beginning of the game, like of my next turn. That is when everything untaps. So I attacked, it did 3 damage, and then also our life points went up to 23. Why? Because this has the lifelink ability. The lifelink basically means anytime you deal damage with this creature, you're going to gain that much life too. So we did 3 damage to the opponent. We also gained 3 life to our life total. So now we're at 23. So we're doing good. We got a big kitty that's doing a lot of damage, and we're gaining life too. So once I attacked, that was the end of my turn because I couldn't play anything else. Then my opponent's turn started. They drew a card, they played a land, and then they decided to play a fairy miscreant, which they tapped 1 island land to play that card. So then the ability of this card, if we remember, is if fairy miscreant enters the battlefield and you control another creature named fairy miscreant, you draw a card. So basically they played this card, and since there was one already on the field with that same name, they now draw a card once they play that first one. Then they just so happened to have another fairy miscreant. So what happened was they tapped one additional island land to play the additional fairy miscreant, and because there's another fairy miscreant on the field, they got to draw a card. So basically they got to draw 2 cards, and now they have 3 creatures with flying out on the battlefield with 1 attack, 1 defense. Now these have summoning sickness, so now these cards cannot be used to attack at this point in time, but this card has been on the field for a little bit, so now they're available to be able to attack if they wanted to. So we're gonna go ahead and they're gonna go into their combat phase. So right now this is an indicator of we are going into the combat phase, which you are actually able to do certain things before the combat phase occurs. So we're gonna say pass, go ahead, move into your combat phase. Okay, so they declared 1 attacker flying, and it did 1 damage to me. This kitty is not flying, and it was also tired from attacking, so it couldn't attack or block. So I took 1 damage to the face. Now we're at 22. So now it's the beginning of our turn. We drew a card, and now we can play an additional land. So now we have 3 lands. Now we have some things we can do here. So what we can do is we can hold off to play these cards. So right now we're in our first main phase. We can actually play cards after our combat phase and in our second main phase. So that's what we're going to do, because I want to see how my opponent reacts to what the attack phase occurs. So we're going to go ahead and click next and go into the attack phase. We're going to go ahead and select this creature to attack. Now they chose not to block, so now we dealt another 3 damage to our opponent. That's why they're down to 14, and I gained 3 life because of the life blank, so now we're at 25. So now we are currently in our second main phase, right? So this is another main phase that occurs after the combat phase has stopped, has ended. So now we're still able to play some cards if we wanted to. I now want to play my Sanctuary Cat. So we're going to play the cat. 1 plains was tapped to be able to play this cat, and now we have a 1/2 kitty on the. Next, what we can do is we can play this Knight's Pledge. So what I want to do is I actually want to play it and attach it to the new kitty. So now this kitty is a 3/4, 3 attack, 4 defense. All right. Wow. I'm trying to like set stops and it's not stop. It's not doing the stops. All right. So a couple things happened there and I'm going to go over it. So the first thing our opponent did was play a land, which you can do every turn. The next thing that they did was played Winged Words. So this card costs 2 colorless, any color of lands, and then 1. So it costs 3 to play. And then this spell costs 1 less, that's what the text says, if you control a flying creature or a creature with flying. They have 3 creatures on the battlefield with flying. So this card actually costs them 2 to play instead of 3. And then the other part of the card says draw 2 cards. So they basically played the sorcery. They played it on their turn. They tapped 2 mana, 2 lands, and then they played the card. And since it's a sorcery, when you play it, it goes into the discard pile, which this is the area over here, and they got to draw 2 cards. That's pretty much it. Then what they did was they attacked with these 3 flying creatures. Again, they have flying. Because they have flying, I cannot attack with my creatures because they're flying in the air and my 2 cats are just bound to the ground. It is what it is. So I took 3 damage. They attacked for 1, 2, 3. So now I went from 25 to 22. Then at the end, after the combat phase, they played this Fairy Miscreant, which basically is another one of these cards. And as soon as it came into the battlefield, they were allowed to draw a card because that's what the card says. If you have another card, same name of it, you can draw a card. So that's what happened. Then they ended their turn, and now it's my turn. So now it is my turn. I can then again play a land. And now I have the opportunity to either play this cat or go into the combat phase. So now, if we remember looking at what this card does, right? It says, when Charmed Stray enters the battlefield, put a +1/+1 counter on each other creature you control with Charmed Stray. So we have a creature on the battlefield named Charmed Stray. So if we play this card right now, this card will actually get a +1/+1 counter, which will increase the power and defense by 1. So we're actually going to play this before the combat phase. The reason is we want this to be bigger before we actually go to attack, because we want to do more damage. So we're going to go ahead and play our Charmed Stray. There's the ability, and there it just gained a +1/+1 counter. So now this creature is now a 4/4. And then our other kitty is still a 3/4. So now we're going to go ahead and attack. I want to be able to attack. They only have one creature to be able to block. The other 3 creatures were used in the last turn on their turn to attack me. So now they are in resting status, and they cannot block now. So they have one creature that are available to block, and it's only dealing 1 damage. So I have no fear of any of my creatures dying. This one can't attack because it just came onto the battlefield. Like I said, the summoning sickness, it cannot attack. So we're going to select this kitty to attack and this kitty to attack. They decided not to block. So a lot of things happened there. So they decided not to block, and they took 7 damage. Now they're at 7 life. And then that was the end of my turn. I couldn't play anything else or do anything else. So then it was their turn. They drew a card, right? They played a land, and then they decided to attack with all 4 of their creatures. So each creature only has 1 attack. So I took 1+1+1+1, which is 4. I took 4 damage. Now my life total went down to 22. The reason is that 22 was, remember, this card has lifelink. So every time this deals damage to my opponent, I'm gaining 4 life on top of it. So basically it's a wash. So now it's my turn again. I drew a card, which was the other kitty, and now it's my turn. So we're now going to play a land, and this kitty we can play now, or we can hold on to it. Might as well play it now. Doesn't really matter at this point. Now we can attack. They have nothing to be able to block. All the creatures are basically used up. They were attacked last turn. But you also got to remember, they didn't use any lands last turn. So all these lands are available to use. So if they have one of those cards where it's an instant and you can play it at any time, they have the availability to be able to use that type of card if they want. So I'm going to attack because it's pretty much lethal damage at this point. So we're going to attack for 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. If this damage goes through and they don't have any reaction to it, they are going to lose 8 life. They only have 7, and we're going to win if they don't have anything to react to my attack. Now let's see what happens. So I'm going to let's see if I can. I'm actually going to try to put a stop on all the phases so I can kind of go through it this time. So we're going to attack with all 3 of these creatures. Attack. So now this is the block phase. So they don't have any creatures to be able to block. So now we're going to go into the next phase, which is the combat phase or the damage phase. We now did 8 damage. They only had 7 life. We won the game. That's pretty much it. That is pretty much it. And we just won. We just won our first game, guys. So that was a lot of information. We're going to do the next video. It's going to be a little bit faster pace. If you guys have any questions about the breakdown of the turns or anything like that, you have this video to be able to come back to. We are going to, on the next video, play another round with going against a different opponent, and we're gonna kind of do breakdowns of the turns again, but a little bit faster pace this time. And hopefully you guys can keep up, and you guys, of course, on YouTube, you guys can rewind and rewatch however you guys want. But hopefully this helped you guys explain and understand what the turns of the breakdown is, and especially going over the entire field of what you're looking at in Magic the Gathering if you decide to play Arena. Thank you guys for watching. I'll catch y'all later. Hey, what's going on YouTube? Thank you so much for checking out the video today. If you like the content what you saw today, check me out at Raven_89 on Twitch. I stream Monday through Saturday. I do morning sessions and night sessions and play a variety of different types of games, such as Magic the Gathering Arena, Overwatch, Call of Duty, Warzone, Dead by Daylight, and much, much more. Definitely check me out, and also check out my Twitter. You can know when I go live, and also anytime I post anything funny or crazy, you can always check that information out too. Thank you guys for the support. Much Raven love. I'll catch y'all later. Peace out.